Want to do is bring in WWL Political Analyst Clancy DuBos. And Clancy, you know, you've been talking about the mayor's travel for quite some time. Thanks for being with us. As always, what are your initial thoughts on hearing about this 11-count criminal indictment against Mayor Cantrell?
Well, it's been a long time coming, and you know, we still have to see the mayor's reaction legally. You know, will she enter into plea negotiations? She's the kind of person who doubles and triples down on her decisions. So there's no telling. You know, if she's a smart defendant, listens to his or her lawyer. So presumably she'll be getting very good legal advice, and whatever that advice is, she should take it. Now, as mayor, she's already considerably hobbled by all the scandals and all the negative press. This just adds, as Michael just said, you know, a huge additional weight. And it puts more of an official stamp on some of these scandals. It's not a conviction, it's only an accusation. An indictment does not amount to a conviction, but it is definitely something that adds to the cloud that is hanging over the second term of LaToya Cantrell, and it is definitely going to define her legacy. You know, we just have to wait and see if she decides to, through her lawyer, negotiate a plea or resign, which would no doubt include a resignation. In fact, the city charter would require a resignation automatically if she's convicted or pleads guilty or nolo contendere to either a state or federal felony charge. Even one charge renders the mayor out of office.
Interestingly, I think that I was looking at the city charter too. It means that the rest of the city council would have to appoint one of the at-large members. Of course, we know at-large member Helena Moreno running for mayor right now.
Right.
What are your
She
thoughts?
would not be the appointee. It would be JP Morrell. They would not appoint, because you have two council members running for mayor, and the remaining five, not the two at-larges, but frankly, the remaining five determine which of the two at-larges. And I'm pretty sure Moreno would say it should be JP Morrell, not me, so that nobody gets an advantage or disadvantage by the appointment or non-appointment. And I think it would probably be a 5-0 vote for Morrell to be the mayor. And in fact, if she pleads guilty or nolo contendere, that would be the end of it. There's no appeal from something like that. So the council would meet, officially declare it vacant, and then name a mayor. And that person, is presumably Morrell, wouldn't be an acting mayor. He would be the mayor for the remainder of Cantrell's term until January 12th.
Yeah, that, you know, would certainly be interesting. How well do you think she would be able to run the city under this cloud for the next 5 months, Clancy?
Well, and I'm not trying to be snarky here, but it's hard to imagine anybody, even the mayor, running it any worse than it's being run right now. I mean, her CAO is leaving, and you know, it's not uncommon. Let me be fair about this. It's not uncommon at all for mayors in their second terms to see an exodus of top employees. But I think you would see the people who are hanging on are either devoutly loyal to the mayor or don't have another job lined up yet, because it's not something that anybody wants to put on their resume that they were working for a mayor while she was under indictment.
But Clancy,
How-
if I
how
could
is-
jump in, she still has to.
How historic
run the mayor.
is this?
She has to run the city as mayor, presumably for 5 months. Even with a guilty plea, that doesn't happen instantly. There are many, you know, stages of the court proceedings. How does she carry on her duties as a mayor for 5 months?
Well, she carries them on under a cloud, under a darker, heavier cloud than she's been doing it for the last several years. You know, there's a cloud hanging over this administration already, and then this just makes it larger and darker and more difficult to work with. And as y'all pointed out a few minutes ago, you know, how is this going to affect how she's perceived by the courts, by all of her decisions? You know, they're not supposed to, but we're all human beings. Everybody's going to be saying, I mean, some people are saying, well, it's about time, and others are saying, you know, that this shouldn't happen, that she's being persecuted, depending on their opinion of her. But we know what her poll numbers are. And she's been upside down for 2.5, 3 years or more. And it's only going to make it worse.
Clancy,
And it's going to make it very difficult for her to, I can't imagine any business outside of New Orleans that wants to talk to her right now or consummate a deal with her to come to the city.
how historic is this that we have the U.S. Attorney's Office indicting a seated mayor? I mean, that
Well, it hasn't happened it has not happened in my lifetime. We've had mayors resign under pressure. We've had mayors die in office. But not in the last 100 years, at least, or more. Maybe never has a mayor been indicted by the federal government while in office.
And what does that say to you about the fact that they did decide to indict her while she's still in office? You're an attorney,
Well,
as
as we all know, Ray Nagin was under investigation. They could have indicted him while he was in office, but they waited till he was out of office and some time afterwards. And I'm not sure if it's because they waited or because they needed to gather more evidence. But this is a grand jury that has reached, the end of its term, and it's a term which has been extended twice, and which it would have required some extraordinary effort, and Mike can talk more about that. But, I think they had all the evidence that they were going to get, and they decided it was time to sort of, as they say, fish or cut bait. And the grand jury decided to issue this indictment with these 11 counts.
Now, Clancy, if I could interject, you mentioned the mayor's tendency to double down, to be combative in the face of controversy. That all would now occur in a completely different light, where anything she says
Yes.
It would presumably be, run through a criminal defense attorney, whether she can even speak out at all. What can a mayor in this situation do? Obviously, it's a gaping vacuum on, are we going to hear from Mayor Cantrell regarding these allegations?
Yeah, and look, I'm an attorney, as you know, and I teach a CLE to attorneys about dealing with the media. And the one thing I impress upon them, two things: be careful about going off the record, and secondly, do not let the client speak ever. And I use as an example Edwin Edwards, who was probably the smartest defendant in terms of a client that we've seen in Louisiana, maybe anywhere. And he got into trouble for speaking out to the press in his first press conference, which he waited 6 weeks because he was presumably or allegedly being very careful, and he said things that were later used against him in court at trial, which proved to be lies. So I don't know who her attorney is or will be, but I'm sure will be someone who knows his or her way around federal court. And it may even be someone who sat through one of my CLEs, but it's going to be hard because she's got to restore public confidence in herself, but she also has to be careful what she says. So it puts her at odds. Those two goals are not aligned. And in terms of the indictment, she would be well advised to speak only through her attorney and only speak to the press about managing the city and nothing else.
Well, that certainly makes it difficult when the biggest question that anyone wants to ask her is about this indictment. So in addition to that, Clancy, we obviously have a very heated mayoral race going on right now to replace her. How do you think this impacts the mayoral race moving forward?
Well, if anybody can be tied to Cantrell, it would be hurtful to that person. I think every one of the candidates, I expect all of the candidates to be respectful and not to try to, do any kind of end zone dance or anything or gloating or gleeful, because frankly, it's bad for the city. This is not just bad for LaToya Cantrell. This is a devastating blow for the city of New Orleans. It just reinforces an opinion or a perception among a lot of business owners and companies nationwide that Louisiana and New Orleans are, cesspools of corruption. So it's not good for anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. The U.S. Attorney even said as much in his news conference, basically saying that New Orleans has been plagued with corruption for so many years that's why he felt it was time to do this now before she was even out of office. Clancy, we can't thank you enough for being with us as always. Thank you for your insight and for all that great information. We appreciate it.